Hi, I'm Laura Dawn. This is MoveOn.org's 5x5, and today we're at the Rolling Stone offices in New York City talking with Matt Taibbi.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Today we're going to talk about corporate tax holidays. Can you explain what tax repatriation is and what corporate tax holidays are?
There's a loophole in the tax laws that allows companies to leave their profits offshore, and if they do leave their profits offshore, they are not taxed. They are not taxed until they bring the profits back into the United States. What happened in 2004 is they declared a quote-unquote one-time tax holiday that allowed companies to bring their profits back to the United States and pay a reduced rate. So the top corporate tax rate is 35%, but in 2004, the lobbyists hit Washington hard. Congress got together and allowed companies to bring their profits back at a 5% rate. Ever since then, companies have been leaving their profits offshore again, and now in the middle of this debt ceiling debate, they're talking about giving them another tax holiday so that they can bring their money back and pay a reduced tax rate.
And did those big corporations use all of that money to create jobs like they promised?
No, and in fact, most of the companies that were the prime lobbying forces behind that whole deal ended up enacting mass layoffs, and that's the same situation that we're facing right now. In fact, Cisco, which is one of the very biggest companies behind this entire effort, has already announced a plan to lay off more than 10,000 people.
So what are they using the money for?
Well, they're using it for distributions to shareholders, and they're going to convert it into executive bonuses, and basically it's just going to mean more money for the people in upper management of all these companies.
So what kind of money are we talking about?
The Senate has recently undertaken a study that estimates that if they do this time, that it'll probably result in somewhere between $70 and $80 billion of lost revenue.
So in your blog, you call transfer pricing a scam. Can you explain what transfer pricing is and why it's a scam?
So say you have a pharmaceutical company, you would create a foreign subsidiary that owns the rights to a certain pharmaceutical patent. Then the parent company would essentially transfer that patent to a foreign subsidiary. Then they would buy back the resulting product from their own foreign subsidiary. That would make the foreign company the profit-generating mechanism within the corporation. And again, as long as they leave those revenues overseas, then we're not paying taxes on it here in the United States.
Senator Carl Levin of Michigan is trying to fight the problem. What do you think of the measure he's proposing, the Stop Tax Haven Abuse Act, and what's your understanding of it?
Well, Carl Levin, his permanent subcommittee on investigations has been fighting against tax shelters for a decade or so, and this is sort of their latest effort. All the Levin measure does is it says if you're going to offshore your money, you have to leave it offshore. You can't bring it back through a correspondent bank or a local branch. And that theoretically would force them to make a decision. Do we want to leave the money offshore where we actually can't touch it, or do we want to bring it back to the United States and pay the taxes and then use the money that way?
You discussed in your blog that the proposed tax repatriation holiday is gaining bipartisan support and that Senator Levin is sort of out there all alone on this. Why do you think that such legislation would be gaining support from Democrats, even as they're considering making cuts to essential government programs like Social Security?
The reason is obvious. There's a massive lobbying effort by some of the wealthiest companies in America. They give very generously to all these politicians on both sides of the aisle. And it's one of those classic subterranean stealth maneuvers that goes on in Washington all the time. Here, let's reward a campaign contributor quietly outside the eyes of the media while we stick it to ordinary people over here, and that's all on television.
Companies insist that closing the tax havens or having any kind of real corporate tax reform would make American companies less competitive globally, and that it would actually cause more job loss and subsequently more financial hardship in the USA. What's your take on that?
These companies depend upon the health and stability of these massive, wealthy, westernized democracies like the United States and all the Western European countries where they're selling their products. They need rich or relatively wealthy customers to buy their products. So they need these countries to be stable and to have functioning governmental systems. So they need to help finance that process. They need to contribute tax money to make sure that we still have a functioning democracy and a functioning society. What they're proposing to do is create a kind of a system of archipelagos where the profit is all located in these tax havens, and the patents and the intellectual properties are all kept offshore in these little zones that are walled off. They want to share in the prosperity over here, but they don't want to pay for it. They want to keep the profit-making mechanism someplace else. It doesn't work like that. If they want to have access to this consumer base, they have to pay the piper. It's just not fair otherwise. I understand the logic, but there are 300 million people in this country that also would like to see their tax rates lowered, and can also think of a lot of reasons why that would make sense, why it would help them, and they don't get to make that argument.
Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I know Move On members everywhere really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
And that's it for 5 by 5. I'm Laura Dunn. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.